It's obvious that trees are It's obvious that trees are an essential part of our ecosystem. We've got to live within that, but we have to get that within balance. And that doesn't mean being frightened about planting trees. You're on Hilltop Farm, Carricalinga, and we're here doing some revegetation. The farm here is mainly a cattle operation on this side. We've got over 1,000 olive trees on the other side of the farm. It's pretty hilly, as you can see. It's had a lot of trees cut down. We're quite excited about putting some back.
During the 2019-20 bushfires, the glossy black cockatoo lost around 60% of their feed tree habitat on Kangaroo Island. Here on the Fleurieu Peninsula, historically, there would have been thousands of hectares of sheoak woodland habitat, and only around 2% of that habitat is now currently remaining. What we're really excited about is bringing that habitat back to mainland South Australia and potentially bringing glossy black cockatoos back to the mainland at the same time.
We're basically providing an insurance policy for the glossy black cockatoo population on Kangaroo Island. We're planting drooping sheoaks, which is the primary food source for the glossy black cockatoos. But as with all our projects, we try and include biodiverse mixed species as well. So we're planting 19,000 trees in 3 priority sites for the project. And so we've taken seed from drier parts of the state and then planted that seed in these areas here. So it's going to be adjusted for any potential climate. If we plant it, hopefully they'll come, make little cockatoo babies, and then spread out, multiply.
The native trees that we're planting are going to have benefits far beyond just the glossy black cockatoo, and hopefully in the next few years these seedlings will attract a vast array of wildlife, from tiny insects to birds to potentially even digging bandicoots.
I think if we saw glossy black cockatoos back here again, it'd be fantastic. I think every farmer should have a good look at his property, work out which areas would benefit from re-veg and just do it. Work with a company like Greening Australia and WWF and just get trees back in the ground. We've done so much damage already, it can only be good.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. How are you? Are you well? Folks, the video that you've just watched then is just an insight into what we're doing today. It highlights some of the environmental projects WWF Australia are involved in. Now, welcome everybody to the Project Catalyst Grower Forum for 2024. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians, past, present and emerging, on whose land, sea and waters we work. We acknowledge their enduring spirit and cultural connection and their responsibility as First People to maintain and care for the country. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tony George. I'm honoured again to be your MC at this year's Project Catalyst Grower Forum. It's been an eventful 12 months for a guy like me from Cairns. We had a 1 in 100 year flood, as I was speaking with having a beer with a couple of boys up from the wet tropics as well, so it's been very interesting. It has been really interesting though, watching communities, industry and governments all work together to try and get roads open and get things back to normal up there as well. So it's been very interesting indeed. Personally, for me, over the last 12 months, that has been pretty challenging as well. I finally finished my MBA in leadership, so it took me about 3 years. And I've got to be honest with you, change can be bloody hard for this old dog anyway. Doing an MBA over COVID, etc. The first day that I was on there, my wife, who's in the university sector, left for work, and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and really looking forward to getting into it. Well, she came home at about 6 o'clock that night and looked at me and she said, "My God, what's wrong?" And I had tears welling up in the eyes, and I looked at her and I said, "I think I've made a horrible, horrible mistake." So, change can be really hard. But, I really was amazed at the level of help that I received during over those 3 years. From friends, peers that I'd built networks of knowledge and things through. And while I was studying, and I thought this was very important for today, I've come across a great quote by a learning expert by the name of Dave Snowden. And he wrote, "In the context of real need, few people will withhold their knowledge." And that's most definitely been my experience, and I'm sure all of your experiences today. So, nearing the end of the MBA last year, was absolutely blown away by Kim contacting me and becoming the host of the Project Catalyst Conference last year. I was really interested, and I've done a lot of emceeing before, but I was so interested in seeing firsthand how engagement between all of the stakeholders makes such a difference in innovation, efficiency, and best practice methods, especially in agriculture. So, this year, again, with the call, I was thrilled to learn that Leading Revolutionary Change, Shaping the Future is the name of this year's conference and mission for 2024 and beyond. Now, before we commence, can I get you to thank our organisers for a start, Andrew Campbell, Ross Neven, Kim Clyden, the partners, and all folks of the sponsors that you see on the screen. Without, it wouldn't be possible to gather here and share knowledge. So please, a big round of applause to all involved. Absolutely fantastic. Alrighty, this year again, we're going to be live streaming today's sessions for you as well via YouTube. So just a little reminder, like last year, that please be aware of your volume, no dropping the magic near the microphones, you know what I mean. So we've got microphones and cameras all around as well. Just take a quick look at where they are and things. A little bit of housekeeping for you before we get going as well. Toilets, they're just outside the function room. They're almost right across from the hall there. The exit point as well out there. Can I just ask everybody just to have a quick check of the phone, make sure it's on silent. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to get the harassing from people and things. So just have a quick check there as well if you could. In the event of fire or emergency, the staff are going to help us there. Basically, don't go in the lifts, but they'll be pointing us in the right direction there if there's anything there. Well, we've also got for you tea, coffee and cold refreshments, thanks to Coca-Cola as well, all available during the day. You can see some of the drink stations down the back there as well. Teas and coffees are in the corner as well for you. Wi-Fi, yes, that's right, we're going there. Wi-Fi, I've got a little chart here, so if you haven't connected to the Wi-Fi as well, I'll have that down the front. It is on the Ocean International Conference on the Wi-Fi, and the password is OceanConf, as in Ocean, C-O-N-F, and the number 1. But if you're in need, come and see me during the day. One other thing, you can see all the magazines on the tables there. They've also got feedback forms in this, and this is really important during a conference. Feedback lanyard return. Now, you can fill in your feedback form. It really does help them with conferences. My advice, try and after each session just make a mental note, because otherwise at the end of the day it's pretty hard. But it will be, if you return it back, you get a raffle ticket, and in the draw for a gift voucher for $150 as well. So $250, it's gone up, people. This is good news, yes. Do I hear 300? No, it's still $250. Oh, it is 300, so there you go. The longer I stay up here, the more it may go up. You never know. So make sure that you do that. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker of the day has got over 15 years of much gained experience in environmental and natural resource management, believing that the best approach to preserving our natural resources is through the development of partnerships and relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a warm welcome to the CEO of Reef Catchments, Mackay, Whitsunday and Isaac. Would you please welcome Katrina Dent.
Thank you very much, Tony. All right, I don't know how to move this. All right, hopefully you can hear me all. Thanks for that introduction. I do feel quite privileged to be up here, to be welcoming everyone along for 15 years of Project Catalyst. Ross did ask me if I've been to a few, and I have been to many up and down the state in the reef regions, and it's been a pleasure each and every time. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the 15 years that has been Project Catalyst, and the fact that we've had growers, industries and stakeholders come together, and they've collaborated over that time to share their ideas. It all started out with reef catchments, then we passed it on to Catchment Solutions to lead, WWF, and also Coca-Cola. That's some strange partners to come together. They all have a very different business. Their goals are very different. However, they had the one outcome. And with that one outcome and that drive for water quality, productivity, how do we make this happen? They've actually been able to have that success over 15 years for Project Catalyst. They were all committed to making it work, and there's been some great people that have driven that over the years throughout those different organisations. Now, none of this can actually occur if we don't acknowledge the growers, the landholders, the producers, and the work that you have done, also to commit your time and energy to Project Catalyst each and every day it really comes down to. You give so much, you commit, and it's all about that sharing and that learnings that you really want to tell others about to make their job just that little bit easier. Tony, you were talking about change and learning. I also did some study a couple of years back, and oh my God, I don't know what I signed up for, and I didn't cope too well. Tears were also on the cards, which is why I admire what the growers and landholders do. You get in there and give it a go, you suck and see what happens. And you've got a lot at stake in terms of it's a business, it's not just your time, it's money as well, to see if your trials and activities, your demonstrations are actually going to come off. There's the expert assistance from those that help out, industry and so forth, but you still commit a lot. So you really are the glue to it all when it comes to Project Catalyst and the success over those 15 years. I also think with the work that you do, you've also got a long-term vision. It's a generational vision. For the vast majority of you, you're taking on the family farm. You also want to leave that in a better condition into the future. You may not pass it on to family, but at this point in time, you'll have children and grandchildren visiting, and you'd like to actually enjoy the landscape that you're living and working and producing on, and leaving that legacy, that better condition for the next person that comes along and takes on that business. So I think I'm proud of everyone that, attends Project Catalyst, partakes in the trials and the demonstrations. I hope you're proud too. And don't forget to tell your stories. I have the privilege of hearing your stories, your demonstrations, the blood, sweat and tears, as Tony and I've shared. So don't forget to tell those, pass them on. Congratulations for the work that you do, your commitment, both in the past and in the future. Welcome to Project Catalyst. 15 years has passed us, so let's see what the future brings, see if there's another 15 years, but celebrate and share what you have managed to achieve and succeeded in to date. Thank you.
Katrina, thanks so much, mate. Well done. Lovely way to begin the morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. Our next speaker has spent many years involved in Project Catalyst through her role as North Queensland Dry Tropics as the Sustainable Agriculture Program Coordinator in the Burdekin, and is now the Water Quality Program Manager for the Tully, Johnson, Lower Herbert, Upper and East Burdekin and Bowen Regional Water Quality Programs. Today, she's with us and is keen to share all of the latest innovative systems, technologies and financing options. We'll also share with you a summary of the nutrient and pesticide-focused regional water quality program achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to CJ.
G'day. I asked Kim if she could give me a shot of vodka for courage, but she said it was too early, so we'll see how we go. So we only see the slide up here? There's nothing on there. Anyway, no worries. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and sea country of the Great Barrier Reef and its catchments, and pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Today, I'm sure you guys have seen this slide many, many times. Today I'm going to be talking about the grey slice, the Innovation and System Change Program. So basically, part of the $200 million investment, the partnership between the Australian government and the non-government Great Barrier Reef Foundation. Are you telling me I'm too quiet? Nobody's ever told me that. Sorry, I can't look down here, so I'm going to be... Okay. Now am I loud? Am I like really loud? No, still not really loud? Okay. So I'm going to be talking about the Innovation and System Change Program. That's part of the $200 million water quality investment, which is a partnership between the Australian Government Reef Trust and the non-government organisation, the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. So the innovation program was looking at trying to achieve the transformational change that's needed to reach the targets in the Reef 2050 plan. So at the end of 2019, the foundation called for innovative projects. We received 120 proposals. 22 of those were funded, and we actually invested $11.5 million. So we found an extra $1.5 million to invest in the program. To date, 85% of those projects are successfully completed or on track to meet their goals. I'm going to talk a little bit about those in more detail. Sorry, I wave my hands, it's probably confusing for you, right? So there's a couple of projects that are actually out in the market today. So everyone's probably heard of the government reef credits pilot scheme that happened. The Eco Markets Australia is Australia's first NGO environmental market firm, and they've turned the reef credits program into a commercial trading today, available. Then we've got the nitrogen risk insurance. That's a world first insurance developed by CSIRO and WTW, and the aim of this insurance is basically to take the risk of yield loss out of reducing your nitrogen below the kind of safe rates. And that pilot has been completed, and the first payouts were made at the end of last year, and it's having some good traction. Then we've got a couple of projects that are kind of one step away from going out to market. So Pharmacist is working in the banana industry to develop a precision ag approach to nutrient management. And this is industry first, and they've developed the technology and the software to allow for yield mapping and variable rate application. Then there's the auto weed technology. Alex is going to talk about that later, so I won't go into any detail with that one, so stay tuned. And then with any innovation, there's no guarantees that what you set out to do is going to be achieved. And we had some projects where we didn't actually achieve what we set out to do. So the Reef Finance project had some initial success in the early days with farm transitions, but it was kind of ahead of the market, so that one kind of stalled. And then we had the eShepherd, which was using collars on cattle for virtual fencing. And the findings were that the technology that they developed, they just needed a complete redesign. So since that project's ended, they've actually redesigned the technology, and with alternate funding are now running new trials, which is awesome. Then we had a low-cost, robust nitrogen sensor project, which was really exciting. We ran into a lot of challenges with the supply chain issues around COVID and technical special gear that needed to come from China. We got through that, and IntelliDesign created a prototype sensor, went through the desk trials, the tank trials that went out into the field, and it threw up a bunch of challenges that needed to be addressed, which required a lot more funding and a lot more work. When they went out and did the market assessment, the demand just wasn't there for the investment at the time. So this one's currently shelved, but they're seeking funding through alternate methods. So hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years, we'll see a low-cost in-sensor out in the market. Then we had a couple of projects where we just funded part of the longer journey. So the Farmland to Reef Regeneration Fund is looking at alternate funding sources, so we're not always relying on government funding. And this feasibility study was for setting up an investment fund where international investors could invest in agriculture in the reef catchments for significant water quality benefits, but also for a return on their investment. And then the other project that we funded part of the journey, stage 1 and 2, was the seaweed biofilter project, which is looking at a circular economy approach to sediment management. And we funded the concept stage and the initial field trials, and that project will keep going with alternate funding. There's a couple of technologies that are now adopted on ground. The IRAT tool. So agronomists are working with growers in the Burdekin using this tool to run farm-specific scenarios to take the guessing out of decision-making for irrigation efficiency changes. In the Mackay-Whitsunday region, pharmacists was working with the local growers to develop new and modify equipment for incorporation of multi-species crops, and this has been done quite well in the region. And they're getting some really good soil health results from using this equipment. Then the Queensland Herbarium and the Department of Science at the time, it's changed its name now to something else, but they developed a wetland capture app which allows citizen scientists to contribute to wetland data capture, which was kind of a data gap. So that one's also available right now. EEFs, I know you're going to say there's nothing innovative about them. What are you talking about? They've been around for years. Good point. So the innovation around this project was actually taking 7 or 8 years of on-ground trial data, which a lot of you guys have been involved in, and combining it with machine learning and virtual trials through modelling, and then running a whole bunch of scenarios that allowed them to come up with a series of recommendations of how to best use EEFs on your farm. And these publications are now available on the SRA website in the 6 Easy Steps toolbox. Then in the Russell River catchment, there was no soil data available that's required for precision ag, so this project combined EM mapping with data and created soil maps for that entire catchment. I won't go into a lot of detail with these, a lot of sediment decision support tools, so guidelines for managing dirt roads, using drones for managing wetlands, and then access to a whole bunch of data for better decision making for prioritisation and sediment reduction. Funded 3 research projects. The Farming Structural Adjustment Program report is actually a really interesting read. It's looking at potential different approaches to how the industry could be run, and combining small non-profitable farms, potentially allowing farmers to retire, sell the farm but stay in the house, things like that. So they run a bunch of scenarios and the risks and potential opportunities. Then we have an innovative project that is uniting 10 water quality monitoring programs across the entire reef space to try and improve the quality and the consistency of the data, but also to really build capacity within the regions and within the delivery providers and the field staff on how to capture and communicate water quality data. And this project has run a whole bunch of workshops and provided a lot of support across all of the regions, and has had some really good feedback with people really feeling confident that they can now set up a water quality monitoring program. And finally, on behalf of the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, I want to say thank you to all the growers who are out there trying to continually improve and take on risk and try new things. We really appreciate also the delivery providers that are providing support and advice, and all of us together are collectively making a positive difference to the health of the Great Barrier Reef. So thank you.
What I do because I know it's right and I know we're going to get a benefit. And before Catalyst, the environment sort of never, it was there, but it never come into focus. Whereas now, since Catalyst, when there's a change and there's an economic benefit, you'll say, oh, hell, there's an environmental benefit there as well. So it made me look at the whole picture, not just, oh, it's going to save money.
I suppose the draw card for Catalyst was simply that it allowed us as growers to really push the boundaries, look at what was on offer, look at the business and the high cost areas of that business, and really probe that and, you know, work out ways that delivered better value, and in some cases it didn't have a good result. But at least we were able to do that basic work, understand what the results meant, and then make a decision from that to move forward.
Without diversification, we probably wouldn't still be in agriculture. We've had some really tough times in the last decade and even further. I'm just talking about the time since I've been in here. If we didn't have a diversification program, we financially wouldn't have been able to stack up.
Tony Bajaya lives on the original farm his father purchased in 1953. One of the first 19 Catalyst growers, he credits the group for allowing him to think outside the square and try new things.
Change for the sake of change, no. But change, and when you can see a difference and you know there's going to be a difference, that's a positive. I don't think I could say it's one specific thing. It's just a lot of little things that make the difference. Like, you know, somebody will be talking and they'll say, oh, we're doing this with soybean. You know, I'm talking 15 years ago. And you think, oh, okay, you know, that's worth a try. It's just communication, networking, talking, and basically just listening to what other people got to say. I just think if my father never changed, we'd be still driving around on bloody horses. We stand still, we stagnate. We stagnate, we die.
How old are you now, Tony?
Oh, that's my business, mind your own business. Sorry. I was born in 1953. That makes 70-year-old last June.
Proving age is not a limiting factor when it comes to change. Like Tony, Joe is engaged in business processes and farming practices, inspiring his son Stephen.
When I've travelled with Nuffield all around the globe, you know, the most successful production systems were production systems that understood what complemented the core crop and what crop that was, and they implemented it and done well. So I think the long-term success in any cropping situation is to find what rotates well with your core crop. Every crop brings its own biology. So, you know, every new species we put down introduces another lot of biology, which is just addressing the basics of soil health. I mean, you know, Alan Garside and his team 25 years ago understood the fundamentals of that and the value of that legume. But since then, you know, we've done quite a lot of work with sun hemp in the early days and seen some real benefits with that particular crop, not only from the soil health perspective, but from what that particular plant offers. Industrial hemp is another one that we rotate and also has its benefits for the core crop. We've done maize, and you know, of late we've introduced a macadamia orchard, which is a little bit different from the core cropping, but understanding the business and understanding the trends in agriculture, it's about looking at the bottom line and making that as robust as possible.
You've got to keep, you know, working out how you can keep evolving. how you can keep increasing your scale to be able to manage times when margins are tight. When your price is below cost of production, you really need to understand what options you've got. And as we touched on before, without the diversification that we've been doing in our business, it wouldn't have stacked up. But when we threw an orchard or horticultural sector in our business, we threw around a heap of different things in that section. At the end of the day, what was probably the most appealing out of the Maccas was this potential to become some autonomy in the running of the business. As we spoke about yesterday, labour is one of the hardest things that we deal with in agriculture, trying to secure good long-term labour. I'm hoping that we're going to see some autonomy in agriculture that's going to become feasible very soon, and which can help some of that fill that labour shortage.
Zoe Eager graduated with an Ag Science degree in 2017. Now specialising in precision agriculture, the focus is on using quality spatial data to increase productivity and improve profitability.
I've been working with Tony for over half a decade now. So my mentor, Natalie Fioca, was his original agronomist. She trained me. It was straight into the full hog. We're doing fertiliser, and we're not just doing blanket fertiliser, we're doing proper fertiliser based on our yield potential. So it was just straight into the deep end with Tony, but he's phenomenal because he's had so much experience. And when I first started working with him, I was still very early on in my career, but I think definitely my partnership with Tony accelerated a lot of my training. So we can have a look at a paddock and freshly worked, and it doesn't look like there's any variability. You run an EM mapper over, and it doesn't matter if it's got the same soil classification, it's going to have some variability. Now, just because you have variability doesn't mean you're going to get yield variability, but on Tony's farm, we definitely get yield variability. But we need a lot of data to make informed decisions.
2022, we purchased a yield monitor and fitted to our harvester. Because of our soils around here are very variable, our yield varies to the soil. We monitor ground speed, base cutter pressure. It generates a yield map, live data yield map, throughput through the harvester. So it gives us a big picture of what that machine is doing. Zoe rung us up and she said, paddock 15-1 at Rosella, farm 74B, needs gypsum. It was a bit of a shock because we've never used gypsum there before. And because of the soil variability, my next question to Zoe was, how much of the paddock and whereabouts? She said, I don't know yet. She said, I'm going to download the information from your monitor and then look at the yield map.
So in a block that Tony was taking to plant cane the next year, so it was becoming fallow, we had a look at that yield map, and the calculation that was done on the monitor, it just wasn't 100% accurate. And I really don't want to be using information that I don't confidently feel is going to give us a good outcome with a grower. So I said to Tony, I can't use that yield map, and that's just, the nature of the beast. So I said, what other information are we capturing at the same time? Which one of those is your base cutter pressure map. Now, it's really important to note that just because you have a variable base cutter pressure map does not mean you can go straight and do a variable rate application, because so many other factors such as the harvester operator, the speed that it's operating at influences that base cutter pressure. So the first thing I had to do was an investigation. We had this base cutter pressure map that had some pretty distinct lower pressure areas. What other data do I have of Tony's? And we've got about 20 years of really good spatial data here. So we put our EM map over it. And straight away, we had a very distinct high electrical conductivity where we had our lower base cutter pressure map. So I thought that there's something going on here, but we don't know what actually is that yield variation caused without ground truthing it. So we went and did some geo-referenced soil samples in those locations, and we worked out where we had the low base cutter pressure, we had a lower yield based on the actual sodicity or the salt in that paddock, which tied up with our high electrical conductivity, because that's one of the features that EM mapping picks up. So straight away we knew that, and luckily on Tony's farm, the soil type here is called a Sandyford. it has very distinct sodic regions. So he'll have parts that are sodic, and then 50 metres away, it's not sodic. And we've got over 400 soil samples on this paddock across all our different zones, so we have a lot of confidence putting variable rate emollients on this farm. So it was really good to see that the data that yield monitor is collecting, sometimes if we can't use the actual yield calculation, we can use some other data sets. It's not always going to work, but in this case it did.
From that, out of a 15.6 hectare paddock, we applied gypsum on 6.1 hectares. Now, what Zoe did with that base cutter pressure map saved us $11,200 on one paddock. Now, to me, that one job basically paid that yield monitor off. And when you see that, you'll say, right, we're onto something good here.
Advancing technology in ag tech over the last decade, many companies are now deploying autonomous vehicles and robots featuring artificial intelligence.
We're lucky we're in an area where we do work with like-minded growers, and Catalyst has had that platform and helped that really develop. When you're adopting new technology like autonomous vehicles, you know, there is some risk around there and getting that whole concept to work well. If growers are like-minded and understand the risks and understand the benefits, I reckon that's a great way to go forward.
The feasibility has got to work, you know. And in saying that, it may be an object that you might purchase with a neighbour or a group of farmers, because one thing that robotics and autonomy can do, it doesn't have to go home to eat, it doesn't have to go home to sleep. It'll work 24 hours a day, it'll work on Christmas Day. So, yeah, I can understand the costs around it at the moment is probably outside of where the business can make it stack up. But like any technology, I've hoped that will become, you know, the pricing will come down, become more affordable. It may require like a joint ownership of a piece of equipment to allow it to work 24/7.
Autonomy needs to be worked with. We need to understand the technology, adapt it to the farming operations that we're running. So it's getting close, but it obviously needs a lot more fine-tuning. But it's the future, and that's where we've got to focus. We've got to look at all of those areas and understand the implications of it, the sort of the benefits of that and the downfalls of that, and then bring it into the business.
It's the future. Like, you know, it's change, I'm afraid, whether people like it or not. Lack of labour, good skilled labour is very, very hard to find. It's getting harder and harder every year. So, yeah, robotics is definitely going to be the future, whether we like it or not. There's a place for that, but in our scale of economy, I don't think we could afford it. Maybe contractors come in. You know, that's what Mark's doing now, is spraying for grasses and vines. So, yeah, in the future, definitely, there is definitely a place for that type of equipment.
I think one of the really good benefits where we're going to get robotics and automation is probably in the cane space, is the issue that we have with our seasonal labour force. So at the moment, I think the biggest boundary is that it's really set up for broadacre in the terms of making it economically work for us. But as technology gets newer, cheaper, I think we'll see some really good options on farm. We're already working in the autonomous irrigation space for flooding. So I think it's going to be a real key element on producing more on the land that we have with less inputs.
5 years ago, David Titmarsh left the building industry to semi-retire and chose the farming lifestyle, thinking it would be less demanding.
Thought it was going to be an easy life. That's not the way it is. So implementing irrigation, a better system, quicker way to get over the ground, a little bit more flooding. We also introduce a slow release fertiliser, so the nutrients don't get washed away to the Great Barrier Reef, stay in the ground, they don't move as much, and we notice an increase in productivity. We're yielding more tonnage. When we're using alternative fertilisers, we were growing about 9,000 tonne, and we've increased that to 12,000 tonne.
From 19 farmers to 320 farms engaged over 15 years, leading revolutionary change means influencing generations to come through proven practice change adoption.
One thing I've always said about agriculture, you know, this is not a short-term gig. It's not a medium-term gig. Every decision we make is a long-term proposition. So if we looked at the business in the short-term light, I don't know whether I'd want to be here, to tell you the truth. But, you know, I keep looking at the long-term prospects, and I think it's exciting what's going to happen down the track. You know, I think ag's got a lot to offer. I think it's good. It's great, you know, that we've seen broader adoption, and at the end, I suppose that sort of is comforting.